My topic is going to be about how to make your event evangelistic. So I'm going to jump right in, and I'm going to share just 6 things that I think that you could really help keep in mind when you're thinking about making your event evangelistic for kids and for their families. So let me say a couple of things, and everything's going to start with B. So first of all, think about how you can be intentional. You know, one of the things that I always tell people, things aren't going to happen unless we make it happen. And so as a leader, or if you're not a leader of a, of a ministry, you're probably a volunteer, and your input and your feedback to your leader is so important. So it's crucial that every single one of us be intentional about how we can make sure that we can ensure that our events are evangelistic. But the first thing that we have to make sure is that we're intentional about what we're trying to accomplish with our event. And I hope when you're thinking about it, you're thinking about, again, not only having fun, as I said. I think that's a great part of any type of event in your ministry, but you have to make sure that whatever your event is, there should be some type of gospel presentation, or make sure there's a gospel presence when it comes to your event. And so, but it's not going to happen unless you make it happen. So one thing I want to say next is you want to be alert. What are natural times during the year that you can promote evangelism in your ministry? And those of you that are on, take a minute and write that in the chat. Tell me some times during your ministry that you feel like that it would be easy to promote evangelism, that'd be easy to share the gospel. What times of year is it easy? One of the things that I think of right off the top of my head, we just finished it. Easter is an awesome time, a natural time where we can share the gospel with kids and their families. And so, what might be another time of year that might be easy, again, to share the gospel? All right, people are writing in the chat. Okay, Pam says that they have, in Rhode Island, Christmas is a great time. Exactly. Christmas is a great time to share the gospel. That's exactly right. Easter, just like I said, Easter. And you also mentioned, Pam, Mother's Day, Father's Day are good times to promote, VBS. And Alice says VBS. I'm already thinking VBS. Good. Thanksgiving. Erin says Thanksgiving. So these are natural times when you could naturally promote the gospel, right? Think about that during Thanksgiving. What's going to be the theme for Thanksgiving? It's going to be gratitude, right? And gratitude, there's all sorts of scripture verses that you can bring gratitude up at, right? Right? And it doesn't have to be an event. It doesn't have to be an event. I'm not saying it always has to be an event, but events are good things. That's what we're focusing on tonight. But those are times where we can have our kids focused on helping share the gospel with their families, talking about gratitude, making sure that leading up to Thanksgiving, sometimes we miss the opportunities that we have. Sometimes we, Thanksgiving comes and we do it just for the one Sunday before Thanksgiving, or it's kind of an afterthought after Thanksgiving. But think about the fact that maybe we could start thinking about it a little earlier. If you thought about it early in the month of November and did a little something every single week that promoted the gospel, promoted evangelism, and made sure that either the kids took something home that was evangelistic, having to do with gratitude. One year, our church did we did trunk or treat the last couple of years, but we did a drive-through trunk or treat. And when we did it, we wanted to make sure that we could resource families thinking about Thanksgiving, because, you know, we didn't want to too much promote trick or treat. Even though we gave candy out and all of that, we decided we wanted to promote Thanksgiving. So one year we gave out pumpkins. We gave those little sugar pumpkins out and a magic marker. And we put a note in the bag with the pumpkin and the Sharpie that we sent home. And we encouraged families to write down during the month of November things that they were thankful for. And then that would be a great centerpiece that they could use for their Thanksgiving table. You know, that might be one way, again, that you could, you know, promote sharing the gospel, promote gratitude, promote spiritual things. This past year, we had done the pumpkins 2 years ago. This past year, I got little like mason jars that I found at the dollar store. And then we got those tongue depressors, those big jumbo tongue depressors. We gave them another Sharpie again. And then we encouraged them to write on the tongue depressors things that they were thankful for. And they could put them inside the mason jar, and kids could pull them out at dinner time and talk about the things that they're thankful for. So there are certainly ways that we can promote, you know, sharing the gospel in a wide variety of ways, way before, before the event happens. But again, it takes being alert. It takes being intentional. Those two things, we have to make it happen. And then the other thing is we have to be alert to those times when we can do that. So think about Christmas. You know, what are some things that we can do at Christmas time to be more evangelistic? And write that in the chat. What are some things that we can do during Christmas time? And not just, now think of an event. You know, what type of event could you do during the Christmas season that you could use to promote the gospel? One thing that came to mind as I was thinking about this the other day was, you know, having a timeout for parents so that they can go Christmas shopping for their kids, and doing a movie night at the church, or a movie afternoon, doing something, say 4 o'clock, 4 to 7. It doesn't have to be late, but you could have a movie that was focused on kids, that had a gospel presentation. If you remember, several years ago, they had an animated movie that had come out, you know, about, you know, the journey to Nazareth. That again was a great little movie for kids, wasn't too long, but again, it promoted the gospel. And during that night out, when the parents came, dropped their kids off, and you maybe provided pizza, some games, you could do a craft with that. You know, again, have the movie and have a little spiritual conversation about that. And then do a little bit of follow up by sending something home with the parents, letting them know what you talked about. Give the parents some additional questions that they can talk to their kids about, and ask them what they learned about the movie. You know, things like that, that I think really helps, you know, promote the gospel. Certainly we want to, you know, connect with families, and we want to give families opportunities to get away, you know, to do their Christmas shopping. But again, all we need to do is make sure that we're keeping in mind that there are just natural places where we can be sharing the gospel. So, you know, think about that for you. Alice has said Vacation Bible School. You know, what are ways in Vacation Bible School that you can share the gospel? You know, a lot of times at Vacation Bible School, churches just focus on one day to share the gospel. And I think now the most curriculums do it on Wednesday. So they have Thursday and Friday to kind of follow up with kids. But perhaps thinking about all through the Vacation Bible School sharing the gospel. All right, Erin says, I was told instead of Elf on the shelf, have Mary and Joseph go all over the house and end up with Jesus on the 25th. I love that idea. That's a great Christmas idea. You know, going back to thinking about Christmas, and maybe the church, you know, we can't, I've never heard of Joseph and Mary, you know, made up in a box or something like that, but maybe you could make, some figures, you know, that you could put them on a tongue depressor and give them to families, put them on cardstock. Maybe somebody in your church is really good with wood, and, you know, put them on wooden pieces, and they could be, you know, I can just think in my head, they certainly could hide that, give them ideas. I think that's the other thing. When we give parents stuff to do with their kids, make sure that you give them ideas, because a lot of times we give ideas to parents, or we give something for parents to do, and then we don't really give them, you know, detailed instructions. And unfortunately, nowadays, that's what parents need. They need some detailed instructions so that they know, you know, what do I do with these? You know, so love that idea, Erin. I love that idea. If you have any more details, you know, I would love that. It's a great idea. Love that. And then Erin also mentions have a page of the wordless book for each day of Vacation Bible Week. Yep, the great idea. Great idea. Small things just like that are focused, you know, be alert and make sure that we're focused and intentional about sharing the gospel. It's just you know, such an important part of doing that. So that's a great, I love that idea. Love that idea. So first of all, let's be intentional. Let's be alert to those natural times that you have in your ministry to share the gospel. And we've talked about, as I said, you know, Christmas. We've talked about Easter is an opportunity. Thanksgiving is an opportunity. Certainly VBS. You know, and you'll have some more ideas as we go along. The next thing I would say, I think Angie just popped on. So if you are, welcome. So we need to think about being proactive. You know, take the lead. You know, sometimes if you're a volunteer, maybe not, you know, you don't have to say, hey, I'll do it all, but be proactive and say, hey, I have this idea, you know, let me share it with you. And maybe that will help your team, help your leader. Because I'll tell you, us leaders we can get burned out pretty quickly in ministry. And so we really need our volunteers to just come alongside of us and kind of fan the flame. So if you're a volunteer out there and you have ideas, you know, be sure to be proactive and share that, you know, with the leaders in your church, you know, and maybe help them to make it happen. Again, doesn't mean you have to take over or do anything like that, but, you know, I just love the idea of thinking about that it's not always about one person, you know, doing everything in the ministry, but it needs to be about everybody doing a little bit. So make sure you're being proactive. Like I said, I love that idea about the Mary and Joseph, you know, kind of like the elf on the shelf idea. And if you had some ideas and said, hey, I don't have the whole, you know, I don't have the whole thing, you know, figured out in the box here, but these are some thoughts, and then bring it to your leaders and then get other people to share their ideas. And before you know it, you'll have an awesome opportunity to share with parents and families as you go along. So, but I'm going to definitely check that out, Erin. Thank you. I bet there's some stuff online about that. So let's be intentional. You know, it's not going to happen unless we make it happen. Let's be alert to the natural times that we have, opportunity to share the gospel, and make sure that we're proactive. Don't be quiet. Don't think that your leader is going to be able to generate everything, but be willing to, share your ideas. Another thing that we need to make sure we're doing to make our events evangelistic is we need to make sure we're relational about that. That's the most important thing when we're sharing the gospel, is being relational with people and making sure that we're building a relationship with them. If we want to have the opportunity to share the gospel with kids or with their families, we need to make sure that we're getting to know them, and that they're getting to know us. Because trust me, if they're visiting your church or they're visiting your ministry or they're coming to your event, they've got you kind of looking at you under a microscope, and so we need to, make sure that, we're being transparent and that we're relational and that we want to get to know them. And that's how you're going to, like I said, have an opportunity to share the gospel when you build relationships with them. Great ways to do that. And again, write some stuff in your chat. What do you find the best ways that you build relationships with parents and their kids at your events? One of the things I remind people, one of the things we can do, which I think is so important, is getting to know their names. Getting to know their names. And it's funny, we have people that don't come to our church, but come to a lot of our events. And it's amazing how impressed they are when they come and we know their names. And I think, again, that's a great way to build relationships. When I'm in the supermarket, a couple of months back, I was in the supermarket, and one of the mothers who comes to a lot of the events was there in the supermarket with her two kids, and they recognized me right away. And so we got to chat for a few minutes, and it's just, and she was pretty impressed that I knew her kids' names. And, I think that goes a long way with families when we can call them by name. And I even remembered the little boy loves soccer. And so, he just was beaming that I knew that he loved soccer. We had a little boy at our church, and he loves dinosaurs. And so I call him the paleontologist. And so it was just the funniest thing. He couldn't get enough of the fact that I knew his name and I knew he loved dinosaurs. And so anytime I see him, I always say, well, how's my little paleontologist doing? Find any dinosaurs lately? So those things go a long way to connect with the kids, but also to connect with the parents, because they, that dad, he's a single dad, and he just loved it that, I knew what his kid was interested in. So being relational, certainly goes a long way. And then the last thing I would say, when you're thinking about making your event evangelistic is, being loving and being caring. What's the important things that we need to go after? What are the important things that we need to do to show that we love and care for people? And so those are just 5 things to keep in mind when you're making your event evangelistic. Keep in mind to be intentional. It's not going to happen without you, going after it. Be alert for times in your church life that's natural to share the gospel. Be proactive, whether you're the leader or you're the volunteer. Always make sure you're relational. And then always find ways to be loving and caring, because that does go a long way. They're going to remember your church if you're loving and caring. So hopefully that helps. Hey, Angie, it's good to see you.
Hey, guys, I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. You're from Mississippi, so you're a little, I'm thinking your time change. What do you think?
We have the heat wave down here, so I could say that it got to my brain. Is that,
that's a good one.
What we could do?
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yes, it is very good. Well, glad you're with us. I want to introduce you to Angie Boydstun. She is, and I don't know if your title's changed over there, but kind of like what does over here. But you coordinate kids ministry for the Mississippi Baptist Convention. And but you do some other things. So tell us about some of the other things you do along with just kids ministry.
Well, just like everybody, we wear lots of different hats, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I get to do everything from going to churches and doing safety assessments to all kinds of different stuff, obviously related to children. I love all of it. So
Yep. Yep. So she's and you got a little bit of laryngitis. I can hear it.
I do have a little bit. It's a whole lot better. At least there's something coming out.
Oh, that's good. Well, good. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad you could be with us tonight. So what I did was I jumped in and started our session. And so I kind of flipped things a little. And so I talked about what are the things that we need to do to make sure that our events are evangelistic. Now we're going to throw it over to you and you're going to talk about, how to make sure our events are getting done. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Do you want to share yours?
I do, please.
All right, there you go, ma'am.
All right.
And don't forget, if you have any questions, throw them in the chat or comments. We like those.
Absolutely. So I thought we'd have a little bit of fun to start with. I get to talk to you about the principles of event planning. So I thought we'd talk about some of the worst disasters that ever happened when it came to planning events or maybe not planning events. And so I have some stories to share with you to kind of get us started. Number one, our first fail is a venue fail. There was a group that was having a party. They were going to have it at a local barn. It was going to be a lot of fun. What they didn't know was the night before their event, there was another event held at the barn, and the people who owned and ran the barn did not clean up the barn. So when they got there, nothing had been cleared from the night before, and food was on tables, and that had attracted bugs and other things that would such happen when you left stuff like that and let it go unchecked. And so there was a venue fail. They did not check on what's happening in the venue that I've chosen for my event. So case in point, we need to remember that. One of my favorites, we can put out all kinds of publicity. We can put a phone number out there for them to call to register, but you better double check the digits in that phone number. Unlike one particular person who didn't double check those digits, they felt like nobody was calling and they wondered what was going wrong. So they went and called the 1-800 number they listed themselves to see if it worked. And unfortunately, they had transposed some numbers and they had listed the number for a local adult hotline. So that's why they weren't getting any phone calls. So registration failed. Many of you know who this guy is. He's been in the news several times lately, of course. Well, he was hosting, or he was part of an event that Nike was hosting, hoping that he would be a spokesperson for them. And they got up to introduce him, and they kept calling him Stefan. And rather than calling him Steph or Stefan or however he says his name, they said it wrong. And so obviously he wasn't, in the long run, the spokesperson for Nike, correct? He works with, I believe it's maybe Adidas now that he works with, rather, and has made them millions of dollars. So you got to know what you're going to say before you get up to a podium at a special event. Then there's the Barney's disaster that happened at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade many years ago, if y'all will recall. This changed how they hold the parade. The winds were too high one particular day, and they could not control Barney. So he ran into, I believe it was a local light pole or some local wires, that kind of things. And obviously he landed on the ground with a giant tear in his back and scared children everywhere. But you got to check the weather wherever your event is going to be. Then there were the Olympics. I believe it was in Rio de Janeiro several years ago. And they thought it would be a really great idea. Let's have the animal that represents our country, a jaguar. Let's have him be at the ceremony, where we've also got lots of guys with guns and loud things going on. And the jaguar got loose, unfortunately, and he started to charge one of the guys in their army attire and guns, and he had to shoot the jaguar. Not what you want in the beginning of an event that's supposed to be quite inspiring, correct? Big idea fail. How about when they decided, I believe it was what was then maybe LG, the phone company, they decided we're going to give away some phones. Let's have this giant advertising event for our brand new phone. We're going to release balloons. Inside those balloons, we're going to have some coupons for a free phone and some other things. Well, what they didn't realize was everybody desperately wanted one of those coupons. So as soon as they released the balloons, people had sticks that they had forks and pointed objects on so they could reach up and point some of the balloons. And obviously plenty of people got hurt trying to get a free phone. Safety fail. Then there were the Sochi Olympics. I think that's how you say that, in Russia a few years ago, where they had a technology fail. They were supposed to have this really cool light show where the 5 rings of the Olympics showed, and you can see obviously one of them never cooperated and the entire show went on, and that ring was not a ring the entire time. So they were slightly embarrassed. But there's all kinds of fails that can happen if you do not follow some principles of event planning. And we're going to talk about what a few of those are. The first thing I would tell you as a principle of event planning is that you begin in a timely fashion. In other words, you can never start too early. Start your planning plenty of time down the road. It may be so far away you really can't even see that day, but begin to brainstorm, begin to put down ideas on paper. What do I need to do to make this event come off the way that I want it to come off? Start planning in plenty of time. We live in this day and age where everything is last minute. Everybody wants to register last minute. Everybody wants to keep their options open. But I'm telling you, on this end of event planning, you cannot start too early in the process. So start planning in plenty of time. Consider other time constraints or priorities. What else is going on at your church? What else is going on in the community or the school that's going to be affecting the time or date that you have an event? So have a timely beginning. Number 2, I know y'all have kind of talked about this already, but know your purpose. How does this event that you're planning reflect what your goals are? And by goals, I don't mean just for this event, I mean for your ministry. So whatever you've set as your goals for your ministry, where do your events fall into those? And let me give you a for instance. If you set a goal, this is some legitimate goals that someone we were working with set. The goals were to foster more close and personal relationships between volunteers and children, and to bring unity of purpose and accomplishment among volunteers of the different areas of our children's ministry. So 2 goals. They wanted to create more personal and close relationships between their volunteers and their children. They wanted to bring a sense of purpose and accomplishment to the volunteers in their children's ministry who worked in various programs of their children's ministry. So we wanted them to say, what are some questions we can ask that help us fulfill our purpose at this event? So their goals were to do these things long term. So when they took the opportunity to do an event, they asked themselves, what types of activities can I create for this event that will encourage fellowship among children and volunteers? So let's say that, it is an evangelistic event, but you want your volunteers to understand their role in this is to build relationships with the kids that come to that event. If you don't set out purposefully to make that happen, often I think of things like fall festivals, where we have lots of different activities, and often our volunteers will run those activities, but there's a difference in hosting a booth and building a relationship with the people that come to your booth. So when we talk about being purposeful, it means down to everybody knows what their role is to accomplish those particular goals. Another question that we asked this person to look at as they planned events was, how can this event encourage sharing opportunities among volunteers? Their goal was to get people who might not ever necessarily see each other. Maybe they worked on Wednesday night, others worked on Sunday morning in their children's ministry, and they wanted them to come together and see the big picture of what the entire children's ministry was, so they could talk to one another and get on the same page. So what could we do at events that would create sharing opportunities among volunteers? Maybe I'm purposeful in putting different volunteers together to work at different locations. Maybe I'm purposeful in creating an activity that will lead them to what I want them to do to accomplish my goals. And then obviously that last question we wanted them to ask was, how will this event aid volunteers in seeing the big picture? If you're going to be purposeful in an evangelistic event, you've got to question yourself about what you're doing to reach the goal that you've set to be evangelistic in that event. Then I would say pay attention to the details. And here's where it gets to be a lot. There's a lot of details to think about, right? I've got a 4-page plan sheet for events that covers all of these, because I think if I don't put it down methodically, I'm going to miss something if I'm trying to be purposeful about planning an event. So I have things on there like, what type of registration are we going to do? Are we going to do it online? Are we going to do it ourselves? Where are we going to put the information about registration? How am I going to handle that? What kind of information do I want from people who come to this event? How am I going to start the relationship building right there at registration? What about the food? Obviously, as the church, we know that's got to be a biggie, because that just is a lot of what surrounds the atmosphere of an event that we plan. We got to think about costs. What kind of money do I have? Do I need to solicit donations? There are people in your community who might want to be part of the event, and they might give you donations if you feel like you want to do something, but you don't have the money in the budget to do it. You've got to start early, like we said. You've got to be purposeful, and now you got to put all these details around it to build your event. What kind of programming are you going to have? What are you going to actually do at the event? I may be the only person who's ever fallen into this, but early in ministry, for sure, I didn't plan enough to happen at an event. And it's got to be enough to keep people engaged for as long as you want to keep them there. So think about the programming. What kind of technology do you need? Do you have AV needs? Are you going to have a speaker? Are you going to need a microphone? Put down all of those things, because you don't want to be caught at the last minute trying to fit something in that you didn't think about. Think all the way down to, what kind of signage am I going to need at this event? What do I need to direct people to different places? What kind of security do I need? Do I need to have a security guard? Do I need to have certain places blocked off, roped off? What do I need to think about in terms of security? What do I need for equipment? Hey, if I'm going to have an event that's got all the bounce houses and all that, obviously I'm going to call somebody to reserve that type of equipment, but there may be other things that I've not thought of that I need to bring to an event, or I need to secure for an event. What kind of equipment? What about insurance? Different activities that you do may require a different look at your insurance for safety purposes. For instance, let's say that you're going to do, we have an event here in Mississippi. Our evangelism department does a literal horse trail ride. And so they have people come to one of our local camps and they do a trail ride. And as part of that, they're sharing the gospel. But you know what? That's probably something that would be different. If you wanted to do an event like that, you would want to call your insurance agent and say, hey, do I need a rider? Because this is not something typically we might do at our church, on our property, wherever you're hosting it. Think about insurance. What do you want to do giveaways? Have you got to put some stuff together that will get people to want to register, that will get people to be interested in the events? What are you going to do for those kinds of things? Who's going to help you do this? Who are your volunteers? What kind of job descriptions? What kind of training? Because they need training too. If they're going to be part of this event and it's going to be an evangelistic event, they got to know what they're doing and what they are supposed to be engaging in at this event. Who might be a partner in this event for you? Maybe it's somebody, another ministry at your church. Maybe it's somebody in the local community. Maybe it's another church in the area. Who can partner with you to put this event on? Because sometimes we can get more done when we do it with other people than we can just with whatever our limited resources might be. What do I need to consider about special needs? Am I going to have special needs folks attending this event? And what do I need to do to accommodate that? What do I need to do to have photography? There's a principle that says if you don't get pictures, it didn't happen. You know, we live in the digital age where everybody lives their lives through pictures. So this can't be stressed enough that you get some attention paid to the details of how am I going to get photographs of this event. So you know your purpose, you start in a timely fashion, you're going to pay attention to the details, you're going to target your audience. Who do you want to attend this event? You're going to want to look at things like, who is the community that I'm trying to reach? What's the demographic makeup? What are they like? What's the flavor of this audience that we're reaching? And then you're going to, this is where I made the mistake, again, early in ministry, I made the mistake of I can identify who I want to be at this event so they can hear the gospel. But if I don't target them, if I don't reach them with my promotion and publicity, then I've missed a critical point in helping them be there to hear the gospel. So how do you use promotion tools? Some of these I know that you will have heard of, thought of. You want to do things like look at social media. It is where people find their information today. I cannot tell you this particular summer, one of my jobs in the summer is to visit local vacation Bible schools across my state. And it's very difficult to find where they are. So, you know, I may be checking their church websites. I cannot tell you how many I have found that don't list the time that vacation Bible school is. So I'm wondering, is it morning? Is it evening? What time does it start? What time does it end? I know we are cautious with what we put on social media, and we should be, but you should also give plenty of information. Create a landing page, a frequently asked questions page, create a hashtag that you get your church and community in on, you know, hey, you know, Lighthouse Fall Festival, you know, Lighthouse event, whatever. Create that hashtag so that you can get that in their consciousness. That's how people think today. Include your church members, people that may or may not be helping with the event. They can write cards, they can send out flyers, they can social media post and like and share. They can put signs in their yard. I've been driving by a house in my neighborhood for about a month now that has a vacation Bible school sign in the yard. And one of the things I've noticed about it is the writing on it is so small. I literally can stop and it's right by the road, but I cannot see where it is. I've been curious for a month to know what vacation Bible school that is that they're offering. And there's a QR code. I have not yet scanned that QR code, and I just was curious. But if you put a sign in your yard, people are interested in an event, especially if they're looking at, hey, I know that neighbor. I didn't know they went to church there. I didn't know they were going to be part of that event. Get your church members involved. Give them incentives to create invitees. You know, hey, if you bring 5 people to this event, we will give your Sunday school class, if it's a Sunday school class or small group that's creating this invite, why don't we give you a pizza party? Why don't we give you something for your classroom? Give them an incentive to invite people. Make it a game, make it a competition. And then outside of your church, how can you get on neighborhood social media pages? I know a church plant in the area that a couple of years ago, that's how they started their vacation Bible school. They put it on the local neighborhoods social media page where the church was part of. Go to community events. This time of year in Mississippi, we have community events all over the place on Saturdays, festivals and different things in every kind of small town. Those are great locations to set up a booth, give away something, have a contest at that booth, something that draws attention to your event so that you are able to promote it. When it comes to promotion, I want you to stop thinking about invitations like it's 1999. You know, things that we used to do need a little more punch in 2022. So you want to do things like create a VIP element to your event. People want to think, hey, I'm something special. So if it's somebody that's not a member of your church, maybe they automatically become a VIP and they get something special, or they get special treatment at your event. People love that kind of thing. That's why gold circles are created at concerts and things like that. Create a scarcity. Print a few tickets and give away those tickets, and then you're able to say, hey, tickets are gone or whatever. Create a scarcity so it creates some intrigue about the event that you're putting together. Everybody likes humor. It's why videos go viral many times. You know, create something that gets people to thinking, and laughter and humor is often an opportunity to do that. Give pre-registration benefits. Hey, if you register ahead of time, there'll be a special gift bag for you at this event. Get folks that you know who are bloggers, who can put stories out there, whether it's an interview on whatever works in your community. It could be a local radio station or television station. Anything that gets the word out. Stories sell things, and they sell events just like anything else. Put video media out there. People want to see a video. Put a video of what happened last year at this particular event so that people are intrigued and they might want to come again. We talked about the frequently asked questions page. This is just where I think you need to put a lot of your energy, to be honest. If your event's going to be evangelistic, if they don't get there to hear the best message we've got for them, then we're missing the whole point of doing the event. I would say another principle of event planning is walk through your event. Do you find any possible glitches, anything that you haven't thought of? Literally walk through the venue, walk through the day, think about where everything is going to be, what the time of day is, what kinds of things do you need to have as backup plans? What are you going to do for emergency plans? If you don't walk through it, you're not going to see some of these things ahead of time. And then I would say include other people in your event. There's got to be somebody. You cannot do it all. If you are the person who put this event together, you can't do things like host any speaker or guest, or answer any questions, coordinate with people who are doing the food, who are there at the venue. You need some runners. You need some people who will help you go find out things, because there's always something that's going to happen at an event that you've not thought of. You're going to need somebody to go find the answer to a certain question. And then lastly, follow up. What happens when the event's over? What do you do to make the evangelistic opportunity that you created last long term? Who is going to be involved in the follow-up? Are you going to get, if it's a children's event, are you going to get adult Sunday school classes to be involved in reaching the parents that came to that event? Are you going to get your vacation Bible school teachers to go out there and speak with the families with whom hopefully they've already built relationships? What are you going to do for follow-up? Are you going to make phone calls, send letters, have something creative as an event, as a follow-up in a few months to invite them back to? What is your follow-up plan? And when I tell you this is important as the event, I'm not overstating it. When are you going to do follow-up? Are you going to do it the day after the event? Are you going to do it long-term into the future? When are you going to do follow-up? Where are you going to do it? Are you going to do follow-up at the church? Are you going to do follow-up in the community? Are you going to do follow-up that's personal into their homes? Follow-up really matters. And then how are you going to do it? Here's where you've got to help the people that are helping you do follow-up, because this is not something we've trained our churches to do. traditionally, they don't understand, hey, I need to long-term get to know this family that I'm following up with. I need to be in their lives when birthdays come around the rest of the year. I need to, like Sandy said, know their name, have something prepared when I see them in the community. How are you going to train your people to do follow-up? And then don't forget, after the event, you got to have a debrief with your volunteers, because you're going to learn something every time you do an event that's going to help you for the next time to be even better. Do evaluations. Get feedback from the people who have come to your event. They will tell you what they thought about it. And then don't forget to thank you to the people that helped you, the people that were involved. There's more than just saying, hey, we're going to have a fall festival. We're going to do it out here on the parking lot. We're going to serve hot dogs. You know, there's a lot going on. So principles of event planning are something you want to remember when you're trying to do those evangelistic events.
It's like a fire hydrant, Angie.
Did you have any questions?
Yep, we do have some questions. It's like a fire hydrant, I said.
I know, sorry.
So
obviously, I think very, very systematically when it comes to that.
That's it. That's it. So, so talk a little bit about the planning. So, I always think, you know, that we need to string events, because if we're going to make an impact with families, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I definitely think that's something you've got to take advantage of. You've got to think in terms of a year or two, because if you've got an event, we know that people are going to come to your event. They're not necessarily going to show up at your church the next Sunday.
Right.
So it takes a long time to build a relationship. So you want to think, okay, what's the next event that's going to capture these folks to come to our church? I know a friend locally who they did community vacation Bible school for several years. And I think it had been 5 or 7, something along those lines, years that they did this event, when a family that had come to the event all these years, the mother and she were talking, and the mother said, you know what, we didn't know about you guys at first, but now we believe y'all really care about us. And that took 5 to 7 years of creating those events that people kept coming back to, and they had a presence in the community. Yeah.
One of the things, and I want to remind people that are on, if you have questions, be sure to put those in the chat. We'll share those. One of the things I tell people is think about 3. You know, think about 3 events that you would have during the year where you could invite people to, because I think sometimes we have too many things, and it's you know, and it's overwhelming, not only for the church, but it's overwhelming for the community. And I think we need to think about that.
You want to have a reputation as a church for a certain event, a few certain events. You don't want to have a reputation of a church as, well, they're always doing something. It gets much more watered down like that. So you want to be, let's go back to the word purposeful. You want to be very purposeful. There may be other churches in your community that do fall festivals. You may choose not to. You may choose to put your emphasis in a Thanksgiving event, because there aren't so many related to that.
Right. And I think, and I think the other thing is to remind people that, you know, you don't have to you get caught in tradition. So for example, in our town, we noticed that trunk or treat events were kind of sprouting up. Everybody seemed to be doing it. And so we had one, and it wasn't very well attended because somebody else had one right on top of ours, and it was the school. And so, you know, people went to the school because there was more relationship with that particular event. And so the next year, when we were in the planning stages, I said, you know what, I think that, you know, our trunk or treat event has kind of, you know, seen its last for now. because again, we were competing with other things. And so we moved on to something else. And then when the pandemic hit, we started doing the drive-through trunk or treat. And again, it met a need. Now, whether we'll do something like that again this year, I don't know. But I would say, you need to take stock. I loved at the end, you talked about evaluating and getting feedback and all of that, because I think that's important too.
Absolutely. In fact, I think that's an overlooked aspect of event planning. And partly, sometimes I think we are afraid in the church. We're sensitive. We don't want to hear some things that might be negative. But you know what? If people say, hey, the school has a better trunk or treat than you guys do, we need to hear that. Because the event is simply, it's kind of like curriculum for teaching a class for children. It is simply a tool. Your ultimate goal, like you said, Sandy, is to build relationships long term so that you can share the gospel.
That's right. So don't be afraid to let something go. And I look at it like an opportunity. Maybe the Lord is opening up a door to something else. And so again, I think that goes back to what I said earlier about being proactive. And if you have an idea, if you're a volunteer and you have an idea, share that with your leader. It may not be something they could do this year, but it might be something that in the next year or two when the opportunity presents itself.
Or it might be a kernel of an idea that you guys collaborate on and create something that's never been seen in your community before.
There you go. There you go. So think about that. So don't get so overwhelmed, but think about planning annually. I think that's another piece of event planning. I think, it goes back to what you said about, it's never too early to start planning your event. And I think you're right on the fact that people wait till the very last minute to, even to these webinars, people, wait till today to register because, they don't know, something else might come up, so I think we need to be open to that, but we can't stop from promoting and getting ready.
Absolutely. I know you've heard events like this too. A friend who had, I think it was a fall festival type event. They had it at a local bounce palace on a Wednesday night. They had no idea they were going to have 500 people there. But then we've all had events as well where we didn't have 5 people that we thought people would attend. So until you continue to find what works for you and what becomes synonymous with who your ministry is and who your church is, you've got to keep trying.
Yeah. And I would say change it up too. I mean, don't make it so that it looks the same all the time. I mean, you can certainly keep the components the same, but, freshen it up. I think freshening it up is, an important piece of event planning too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now how about evangelism resources? One of the things I say when we're planning something evangelistic is making sure that we can give something for families to take home,
Absolutely. And that could range from, there's some very neat things out there that people like, the company that does Christian leadership and teaching at CTA Inc.,
yep.
CTAinc.com. They've got books, things that families can take home and do together that will continue the gospel message. You can create your own. You can put together kits. Let's say that you do an Easter event. You may put together a kit that's got some Oreo cookies and some little chocolate donuts and tell them they can go home and make the tomb, get some icing and put some green icing on a graham cracker. Give them the tools to have an experience or an activity at home that continues the discussion. So it can range from something that you purchase to something that you put together yourself, but you want to think about, how do I continue this experience into the home?
Right. And it takes a few touches. It doesn't, don't just think that, you send it home and that's all, and they're just going to come flocking to the doors. It, as you said in the last one, 5 years, before a person decided to connect. So I think that's an important thing to think about. And then the last thing I wanted to ask you about, because we're getting ready to close here, is the special needs. How important it is, especially in the day and age that we live. There are a lot of kids that have special needs. And so we need to be willing to make sure that we share the gospel pieces that can help with that, and encourage families.
If you show that you have thought about special needs families, that automatically builds the relationship with them. And they are hungry for somebody who cares about their family. And if you simply have a section of an event that's geared towards physically handicapped people with special needs that are physical, if you create something that says, we've thought about you, then you've got an in with them.
That's right. That's right. And I remember one year, and we didn't get to do this because COVID hit, but love this idea. Like if you're doing an Easter egg hunt, do it an hour early and invite those that have, that are not only physically challenged, but also those that have sensory challenges too, and provide them a way to enjoy that, because like you said, it really makes, goes a long way. So
absolutely. Yeah, it does. That's a great idea.
So think about those things. So write in the chat where we're going to, I'm going to share my screen, but tell me one thing in the chat that was helpful, and that maybe you'll either share that with share it with your leaders, or something you'll think about as you begin your planning process for your events to be evangelistic. So share those in the chat so Angie and I can not only be encouraged, but can share that with others. I've put on the screen my contact information if you want to get in touch with me or with Angie.